Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vortex Edge podcast. Jimmy here, joined by Instructor Chris Urrutia. Look at that, I actually rolled the R pretty well.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Very good, man.
That's a 1 out of 10 kind of thing, so I'm not going to try it again.
Yeah.
From now on, you'll just be Chris. But so Chris, if you're joining us here on the Vortex Edge podcast for the first time, this is going to be one of the first few episodes. You may not have met Chris yet, although he has been on some of the main Vortex Nation podcast episodes before. He is one of the instructors here. And if you clicked on this episode, Chris, you're going to get to know Chris here in a second more because he's going to be the expert here today. But if you clicked on this episode, then chances are you know we're talking about home defense. And that's a topic that we've talked about quite a bit here at Vortex Edge. We've had some classes that have revolved around home defense, but it's something that I think even if you're taking a regular shooting class, a lot of people might be going into the shooting class with the mindset that, hopefully not, but you might have to use some of these skills in a home defense scenario or something like that, right. Along with many other potential scenarios. But home defense is something we're going to chat about here. And again, that title probably said something about is CQB or why CQB might not be the best go-to home defense strategy or plan. So, Chris, I think we can probably tailor this more towards people who are newer to the idea of home defense, with a firearm or something like that. And it's one that I know a lot of people have maybe even already put a lot of thought to. Maybe they even have, let's say pride's maybe not the right word. But a lot of people they can have a little bit of, all the words I'm thinking of are almost a negative connotation, pride or ego. But you kind of think you know what you're going to do if something,
right.
If somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night, you kind of think you know what you're going to do, and you don't want to necessarily hear what other people have to say about it. You kind of want to, no, I got my plan. I know my house or something like that. So we're going to come in. We're going to just offer some suggestions, maybe some stuff that Chris knows based on experience and things of that nature. But yeah, Chris, home defense, something that I think you think about fairly often.
100%.
You hold the topic near and dear to your heart, right?
I do, yeah. I've owned a home now for going on a decade plus, and I like to think that I've successfully defended my home over the course of that time. So yeah, it's something that I've considered where like just the relative safety of my family is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think the reason this title, and I actually I'll be honest with you, at the time of this recording, I'm not sure what the final title is going to be, but I know we wanted to talk a lot about, the idea of, I think a lot of people see in their mind's eye maybe a home invasion occurring, and they're starting to try and think about what they're going to do about it, and they jump into an offensive mindset, right? I want to go to the source of the bump in the night. I want to go to what I think is somebody in my house and, seek and destroy, if you will. Why maybe that is not the best idea, or why maybe you should at least consider other potential options. Chris, can you go into that a little bit? Like, why is this even a topic worth talking about?
I think a lot of times, based on some of the questions we get at the course that we offer here, home defense, one of the leading questions is, well, someone's in my home. What do I get to do now, right? So it's not a question uncommon to it's not endemic just to home defense. It's like the same kind of questions you get like at a concealed carry course. Like people would just want to know, so to speak, what can I get away with? Well, unfortunately, like I've seen enough, human life been taken in all sorts of ways, and like I've come to like restructure my thinking. My thinking now isn't hunting or, like you said, having an offensive kind of mindset when I hear a bump in the night. It's how can I secure my loved ones and get everyone in one place, and then make it to where someone is going to have a really hard time getting through a singular door, and then I can defend myself and defend my family. So it's less like hunty, and it's more kind of get to a place of advantage, and just defend what I love. That's really it. Like, and if I had to put a priority on it, it's like loved ones, myself maybe, and then like way down at the bottom of the list, and maybe even off the list, it's anything property wise.
Yeah.
Right. And even the home itself. right? If I have an opportunity and maybe there's an advantage to do so, I'll just leave. I'll just get everyone together and I'll hightail it out if I can, if that's an option, right? But unfortunately, like you said, a lot of home defense situations, like the intruder is on you, and that's not really an option. Like, you're looking to something a little more defensive.
And I should apologize here right now because I've mentioned a term before like CQB, or maybe it's even in the title, like why CQB maybe isn't the best way to go about a home defense type scenario. Maybe you can differentiate, because CQB is a thing. It's not, when I say that, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, CQB is dumb or something like that. It is a thing, and it has an absolute time and place where it makes a ton of sense. But maybe you can go into the difference between, CQB, which I think is more of an offensive thing, and then, home defense. Obviously, it has defense in the name. Yep. Like, what is the difference between, in a structure, being on the offensive, being on the defensive, assuming you're, of course, the good guy in both scenarios?
Right. Well, CQB at its core just stands for close quarter battles, or close quarter battle, and it's the idea of an element, whether it's one person or I've been in teams of up to 24 dudes going through one structure, right? It's an element entering a structure with the purpose of clearing said structure of any potential threats or pulling someone out. There's all sorts of manners of types of CQB, and I've certainly had to apply CQB in my professional careers in many different ways, and not just the end goal being different, but the execution thereof of how we accomplish that task change from job to job.
Yeah,
it was never the same, and certainly the way that we've kind of gelled as a team here is way different than I did it maybe even at the last job I had professionally, in which I used CQB. So. There are elements, I will say, that do bleed over into home defense, but whereas at its core, CQB, like you said, is offensive. Like, I think what you accomplish and your goal during a home invasion should be, it's definitely like I'm offensive to the point to where I'm securing my loved ones, and then it becomes completely defensive from that point. Like, I am no longer, like, I would never, and we'll get into this, we'll kind of break down kind of a sample plan, but I would never secure or ditch my loved ones in a hard room and then go, well, I can go hunt the bad guy. No, I'm not doing that, because at that point I've kind of signed on to be their gun. Like, I am the thing that's, and this isn't like a mindset thing. It's not like, I'm not going to spat off like a Latin saying or anything like that. Like, I'm literally their gun. Like they, my kids, my wife is certainly capable of defending herself, but if I'm moving everyone to a place, like, that's it. That's my area of operation, my responsibility. I'm not going to leave that. In fact, I'll just put more crap and more layers between intruder and I to make it harder for them to get in. And of course, while I'm doing that, I'm calling 911, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but it's much more defensive than it ever would be. Like, even if I was on my own. Than hunting for a threat or going to the bump in the night. I've more or less know that somebody is coming in. I'm going to my loved ones. Yeah, every time.
Yeah. Now, and so, Chris, at the beginning of this episode, you said that you like to think that you've successfully defended your home thus far. I don't believe that I don't want to speak for you, but I don't believe that you've actually been in the situation where the intruder is coming into your house and they're actually there, right? I mean, when you said that you successfully, quote, defended your home thus far, there is an element of this, and perhaps I think there's a lot of elements of this episode that are other split-off episodes, but there's the preemptive side of things where home defense is absolutely, and it does absolutely include things that you've done to prevent somebody from ever even being there in the first place, or become less of an attractive target, if you will. But, so I haven't been in that situation either, where somebody has been, inside my house, they're on top of me, and boom, they're in my personal space before either. But I have to assume, man, that when I just think about it, my blood gets churning. I get that white blood cell mentality where I'm like, there's a virus in my house. I need to go get rid of it. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And that would have to be so hard to overcome the want to go be offensive.
Yeah. And I think, not to be overly sexist here, but I feel like as men, I think that we are wired and with just an instinct to want to defend what is yours. Right, or the things you love, right? I think those are healthy behaviors, but you have to wire them and be able to react to those accordingly. Like I can't both go hunt the bad thing and defend my loved ones.
Yeah.
While, like we just talked about, like these things happen so fast. Like you have to choose one or the other, right? And ideally, like you would consolidate and defend your loved ones rather than ever go offensive. Now, that's not to say that a good defense is not a bad offense. You know what I mean? Or that in getting to my loved ones, maybe I do have to go offensive, but like. I'm not chasing someone who's running away. I'm not standing there and exchanging with someone who's trying to steal my TV. Like I'm like, right on, man. I'm calling the cops, get out, but I'm still going to my loved ones. You know what I mean? I'm still moving to them. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think we kind of got to, in order to really sort of justify what we've said thus far, we have to give a few examples of why this is something that we sort of preach, quote unquote, here at Vortex Edge in a home defense scenario. Like, there's a lot of potential things that can go wrong. In every movie and every time like that, when you got a guy like Bruce Willis or whoever it is, whoever hero man it is, and they go and they hunt the bad guy. No bad things ever really hardly come of that, other than them getting beat to a pulp somehow and still coming at him, But that's neither here nor there. Yeah. They never go into any of the bad things that could happen. And
roll the credits done.
Right, roll the credits, all done. I'm getting at, you could find yourself in a situation where now you're face to face with not exactly who you were expecting. Maybe it's somebody and you're rolling in hot and you're steaming and you're mad and whatnot, and the person there, maybe shockingly in your house, isn't somebody you want to shoot. You could roll in there, and I mean any number of things could present themselves to you, and now you've put yourself in a situation where you have to make a really, really tough call, whereas maybe had you stayed back, it wouldn't be such a tough call. I'm giving these very vaguely right now, but you could maybe go into some of them more specifically. Like, what are some of these reasons that we have, like things that could go wrong?
Yeah, to speak to your previous point, right? Hard targeting is something that I cover in depth here at Vortex Edge, right? Like the idea that I'm not going to wait to implement a home defense plan until it's happening. Like I'm going to take measures and steps to be aware. First of all, like my awareness of my surroundings, making sure that I know, like I'm aware of like cars coming to an abrupt stop in front of my house, and there's nothing wrong. Like when I was a police officer for 7 years, the bulk of my calls in like a residential area were like, hey, suspicious vehicle, like dude just looks shady, and I'm like, roger that. And it took me 2 minutes to go out there, talk to the person, run the tag, and just do a miscellaneous. And it cost me no time, right? So we shouldn't be afraid to like if your gut is telling you that something is off, like don't feel bad about like making the police come and check somebody out. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with that. I've certainly had moments when I lived in North Carolina where people like were legitimately staking, maybe not my house, but other people's houses. And when the police were coming down the road, they would hightail it out of there. Like, I mean, completely like selling themselves out, right? So I think the hard targeting and the making yourself a hard target is super important. That's like number one, right?
Makes sense.
So I think that if you're doing all those things and you're taking the steps to harden your home in general, I think that what you're left with coming into your home is someone who is like intent on doing you harm, or someone who like is just that desperate, right?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So I say all that because you're more than likely to run, like that big bump in the night is more than likely to be your loved one who's like helping themselves like a midnight snack or using the bathroom. My house now is old wooden floor, and man, I hear my young kids going to the bathroom, and it will wake me up 100% of the time. Like I'll stand up in bed, and I'm like, I gotta remind myself that I can hear the door opening, I can hear them, I can hear little footsteps, I can hear the toilet going down. It's my kid, right? I don't have to go out there gun blazing and clear the whole house because my kid's using the potty.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
I've had it. Shower caddy suddenly just decides to come unsuction cup from the wall in the shower.
Yep.
Dog is shifting around in their bed somewhere else in the house at night.
Yep.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yep. Or and in the event that you do have a pure home intrusion going on, right? Somehow you slept through the entire breaching phase, right? Now they're in on you. Because I can. It's like I believe in Matthew, it says all things are permissible, but not everything benefits me, right? So just because you can do something, it doesn't mean that you necessarily should. Now, there are some states that absolutely say, yeah, dudes in your house, boop, spawns in your house, you can use force, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to look in the mirror, and I'm the one that's going to have to shell out money because I decided to use force on someone who just wanted my toaster. You know what I mean? So if I've got a guy who's got armfuls of property and I'm challenging them, I'm telling them to leave, and they're somewhat compliant, I'm not going to fight that fight. That's a fight that I'm gonna cover and continue to move the loved ones.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then in the extreme, if you do have someone whose intent and only reason for being there, or in the process of removing property from your home, they suddenly decide, I need to hurt them. You know what I mean? Then you need to make it to where they are having to overcome like layer upon layer upon layer of your defenses or like prepositioned stuff, right? To where like they're almost making the decision for you.
They are. They seem to be like they're building your case,
exactly.
if you will. And you're getting less and less of a reason to have pause, or if something did happen where you had to use deadly force on somebody, to have second thoughts.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I've responded to a lot of these calls in my time as a police officer, and I can tell you like the most common response I'll have from like not even homeowners, like it's like I've been to calls where like it was guests that were at the home and they were just bedding down for the night, and here comes a car full of dudes breaking in, and the guys inside hung out with ex-boyfriend, know that there's property in the house. That's very specific, but all in all, statute of limitations. So anyway, they're there to just take stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And now you have caller who's locked themselves in a room, and our best advice to them is just stay there, lock the door, put stuff in front of the door, make it to where you're causing that person to have to go through a lot of stuff to get to you, right? And then our next piece of advice that I would tell dispatchers, like, tell them to stay put, we'll go get them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But yeah, so like back to your point, it just depends, man. Like solely, like you'll have just home invaders who just want stuff, right? Who are desperate people who are just looking to get something. Like in those instances, man, I'm having a hard time. Like unless they put themselves between me and my family and pose me an active threat, right? Here in Wisconsin, like we make it really easy. There's 3 criteria that you have to meet before I can use deadly force. And yes, those do apply to like more like the concealed carry kind of everyday kind of context. But man, it's really powerful when you apply those even in your home. It makes it to where like you said, man, they almost make the decision for you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and because in some states, though, like you pointed out, I think what we're referring to is castle doctrine states. Is that right?
100%. Yeah.
So just because you have a castle doctrine, first off, doesn't mean you can just go in just blasting.
In many ways, it does.
Does it kind of?
Kind of, yeah.
And so maybe it's almost kind of like a philosophical thing or something where you say like you still don't necessarily want to go in blasting. Because I mean, there's so many ways that could go wrong for you, which kind of like I was getting at earlier. But like, I don't know, drunk college kid next door stumbles into your house because they think it's theirs. Should they be there? No. Is it violating and like not a very good feeling to have that happen? Absolutely it is. Yep. But I mean, you go down there and you're in one of those castle doctrine states and you just freaking blast them, like you're not going to feel very good about yourself afterwards, you know? And that's something you got to live with. Like it's sometimes like people think about it and they think about that whole like movie type scenario where they come in and like somehow their shirt's been ripped off. Somehow they're covered in dirt and blood. But they still look so good. And they just do something awesome and heroic and just like totally smash the bad guy. Like everybody gets that image, but
roll credits.
Right. Again.
Nothing else happens.
Nothing else happens. Yeah. But afterwards, like when it was the drunk college kid next door and it's
not a good feeling.
You're not feeling very heroic.
It's not a feeling. Or even as long as I've like carried a gun professionally in training, like if I were to like just light someone up who's in my house, and I'm able to tell, no, that's not my wife or one of my kids, or maybe a guest, and I go up there and they're hands free or like don't have a weapon or a delivery system or a weapon. Like I'm like, dang dude, I don't know about this one. You know what I mean? So I tend to front load a lot of that decision making, right? A really really good friend of mine and mentor on the SWAT team imparted this on me as a young SWAT dude on the Charlotte SWAT team there, Jim Hetrick. He has a saying where he says, if there's any doubt, like there's no doubt, right? Mm-hmm. You don't do the thing, and it's something that we tell the students here is like, man, as you're presenting a gun and if you have any doubt on whether you should, apply that 5 pounds of pressure or so, like don't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like do something to buy yourself a little more time so that you have more bandwidth to make a better and more informed decision. Mm-hmm. Which is why we preach hard, like yes, guns are cool. Like that's going to be that's what we've chosen as a country, like as a main tool for defending ourselves, and it's great, guns. Fantastic, awesome. Right? But like with any, whether it's like this exact gun at my bedside or my handgun, I'm going to have a white light located there as well. Like all my guns have lights on them, but I'm a big believer in having a handheld. Yeah. And it just aids me in that decision-making process. I can get a snapshot by white lighting someone and making a decision. Like, is this a fight? Is this a fight that I have to stand here and take care of because that person poses me an immediate threat and will prevent me from getting to my loved ones? Mm-hmm. Or can I identify them, challenge them briefly as I'm continuing to move, and then go and secure my loved ones and just be their gun, and I can go there and do my job.
I think that's the thing, like when you differentiate offensive versus defensive, mm-hmm. is that the way if somebody's in your home, I think the way that the law afterwards, if you wind up being in a courtroom afterwards, the way society and everybody, like you are the defender. You know what I mean? That's how everyone's going to look at you. And so
you're a murder suspect. Like that's what it is. Yeah.
And so like that's where when we break down the difference between being defensive and offensive, like so if you go on the offensive mode, now what you're describing, let's say you got a white light and all that stuff, and now you do come sort of face to face or in some relative fashion, maybe they're down the hall or something mm-hmm. like that. You're putting it on yourself to be making all these decisions, mm-hmm. which, let's be honest, are usually decisions, especially if it's not your job and something mm-hmm. that you train for all the time or that you haven't seen all the time. It takes time. Yep. So if the person is a legit threat, now you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where you're trying to download all this information really, really fast in order to make a potentially super, super big decision. And then if the person isn't a threat, you're still trying to think about all this stuff. Adrenaline's rushing, and you're putting yourself in this situation. Whereas, there's people whose job it is to go in and put themselves in that situation where they have to make the decision. Hopefully they've done a lot of training. Mm-hmm. And I get it. It's super hard in this day and age because you've got people who are distrusting of, public officials in some form or fashion. And, they're kind of like, well, why would I want to leave it up to them?
We don't call 911.
Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah. And so I do get that to some level. There's this kind of rock and a hard place if you are having that feeling that you put yourself in. But at the same time, like, you kind of live in the world you live in. You know mm-hmm. what I mean? So regardless of whether or not you go down there and, you do, quote, air quotes, lay down the law or whatever it is, like you said, you're still going to probably be a murder suspect. Mm-hmm. There's still going to eventually be people who show up to your house or come knocking or wondering where so-and-so is or something like that. Like, it's just, it's going to evolve from there. Right. Like, it doesn't just end and credits roll, like you've said a couple of times now. Yeah. So that's just, man, I hope nobody listening to this ever finds himself in this situation.
Same here,
because
man.
It's not. I don't think anything good comes out of it.
No. I've been to events where like it's, like a drug house being raided by other dudes, or and I've also been to like sole innocent person having their home invaded for property. Like mm-hmm. both instances suck. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like you said, man, if you take, so to speak, the law into your own hands, then you need to be prepared both mentally and financially and morally on the repercussions thereof. Because I mean, for example, I remember the most glaring event that I responded to. I mean, from the time like the call came in to the time we got there, it was like a minute and a half. So we like my partner and I happened to be in the response area. It took us every bit of a minute and a half to get there, and luckily we caught the bad guys like pulling out of the driveway.
Yeah,
and it's really cool. We got to make an arrest, right? But I think about how much time that person was in there on their own while these
a
dudes
minute and a half probably felt like
it's
a day.
an eternity, right? So again, man, that's kind of where like layering and all that comes into play. Like you almost have to take the decision-making process out of your hands. And you do that by putting as much time and distance between you and bad dude.
And the less decisions you have to make, the
right.
faster you can be.
100%.
I mean, because when you find out, I say if you find out that it is a legit full-on threat, that's where you don't want to waste any time.
Right.
Like, that's got to go.
You don't want to waste any time, and you certainly don't want to be consciously trying to control bullets, right?
Good point. Yeah.
So what I mean by that is like a lot of our courses here are designed around the idea that shooting is shooting, right? I've certainly come to kind of grasp that idea, especially like getting this job. And before that, I won't say that. Like I dove into like competition shooting and the such before I got this job. I actually think that it helped me land this gig. And now if I can make the shooting subconscious, like for myself or like for a student, then that part is kind of autopilot, so to speak, right? I'm not saying that I'm just going to draw and be able to shoot someone. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the only difference between like having you shoot a bill drill on the 50-yard line from 7 yards and like being able to apply that is just a decision-making process.
Yeah.
Like you still, there still needs to be a target ID process that needs to that needs to happen. I still need you to make the decision to engage, right? But then everything that happens after that, the actual execution of like grabbing my gun off the counter or unholstering and applying the fundamentals that it takes to be able to get like an intruder who means you harm to change shape or their attitude, that should be unconscious.
Yeah.
Because the shooting is just shooting, right? So that's something that we've done here heavily, man, and that's something that we preach and something that I've really grasped on. Just getting people to, and I think when you invest heavily the time and the money into making your shooting subconscious, it frees up so much bandwidth, right? Mm-hmm. So now, like when someone's on me, and in that minute and a half, even shorter, right? Yeah. I don't have to think about, hey, form your grip, hey, apply trigger pull, sights, or whatever it is, however you apply the fundamentals, like whatever that looks like for you, making all those processes fundamentally subconscious, like frees up so much more bandwidth and decision-making time. Mm-hmm. It just frees up time, so why not do it?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, Chris, like I said, there's probably a number of split off topics on here. I have a feeling we're going to have more than one home defense episode. So if you're interested, definitely drop stuff in the comments below. But I will ask real quick. So if we're going to say, hey, maybe going full on hero mode and tearing through your house, like a Navy SEAL or something like that. Maybe that's not the best idea for a home defense scenario. What's your kind of recommendation that you give to people for how to navigate a home defense scenario as somebody yourself? You've been on the offensive side of things, and now even as a homeowner and home defender yourself, like how are you approaching that scenario?
So first things first, like in my home, I kind of have home field advantage. Like I know the layout. Right. Sure. So for the most part, and a lot of modern homes now, like we all have like LEDs and like small diode like appliances and with kids, like we have night lights and all that stuff. So waking up and being woken up in that kind of moment, like I understand, and I've certainly done this from countless sleepless nights. Like I could see a lot of detail in the dark. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't have to go blasting and turn all the lights on. I can just go for my handgun, go for my white light, and be very judicious of how I'm running that white light. You know what I mean? Okay. Because I have a lot of detail already available to me, regardless of despite like what a lot of us think, like I have to turn all the lights on and make this kind of a 50-50 thing between bad guy and night. No, I can be judicious with a handheld light, but I do want to have it on me. Secondly, I don't have the benefit of having a 2-man or a 3-man cover my corners, right?
Yeah.
So my initial clear out of my room may be a little different. It may be what we call here is just diminishing returns, right? Where I'm doing kind of a 1-man clear of the next space or the next room. So for me, full disclosure, it's the hallway. I'm going to treat that hallway just like a room. I'm going to get my diminishing returns where I'm pieing and I'm circling around, making sure I'm not exposing myself prematurely to the hallway. And then I'm going to do that, gathering as much information about that hallway as I can, right? With the door open, right? I'm going to get to a point, what I like to call a point of release. Like I've cleared as much as I can. I've looked down the long access of the hallway. I don't see anything. The next place I got to get to is down the hallway before the front door, right? So that's not going to, like, there's going to be things that I'm going to have to bypass.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not clearing
Which
everything.
is another one of those things where you get at the whole why CQB might not be the best bet is because a lot of times when dudes are doing CQB, there's like 4, 5, 6, 7, 24
and you're
of them.
clearing everything.
Yeah. And you got all kinds of dudes on your back,
right?
On your 6.
Unless you're clearing everything to an extent, unless it's like a true hostage rescue to where, or an active shooter kind of response where you're going to the thing.
Sure.
I would almost equate like home defense to maybe more of that context where you may be bypassing initial danger areas where like in a typical CQB context you may be clearing, but I'm bypassing those things to go to the greater threat. More so, I'm going to go for the purpose of consolidating my loved ones, right? Whether that's I'm bringing a group of loved ones or like my wife, our youngest, to another room, or I'm going and collecting another set of loved ones and bringing them to maybe a master or a hard room, right? It just depends on like your layout. You know what I mean? So again,
you don't want to be split up.
No, I would not want to. No.
No bueno.
No bueno in terms of like terminal location of rounds, right? And
bad guy between you and your loved one if you take that shot.
Bad news.
Yeah.
Now, as good guys, I think we're on the hook. Like we have to be the ones creating our lanes of fire, whether that's changing levels and ensuring that the rounds are landing in favorable positions. I accept that, but as much as I can, I'm going to consolidate everyone because that way I have a greater fan of defense, so to speak, and I don't have to worry about accountability in terms of not like putting loved ones between bad guy and I.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's another thing I think, and I kind of keep going back to this, but I think, it's kind of the point of our episode. But another thing I think about is my house, if I go downstairs, the most likely place I'm going to encounter somebody is either in the living room or the kitchen, just because that's where most of the points of entry are.
Right.
And then I'm going to have my family upstairs. And so if I escalate things to where a guy was just going for toasters and TVs, and now all of a sudden he's got a gun and he's pulling it out and shooting, and I'm shooting, well, rounds have a tendency, I've found, to go up. I think when people start panicking, gun muzzles start going up. And so now all of a sudden, all you have is drywall and some insulation and maybe a 2x4 if you're lucky between you and them. So it's like, I'd like to stay on the same level.
Yes. I agree. And if I can, like, put them behind me. So, like I said, I have...
You get your 180 like you're in
get
USPSA
your,
or
you're good. Yeah. You're good there. Again, you still have to account for somewhat like rounds. You don't want to be shooting through a bunch of windows together. But but in the end, like I'm just like consolidating and like I'm my family's gun in a moment like that. You know what I mean? And just to kind of tidy up like the CQB style movement and like a home defense movement for me. Initially I might do the diminishing returns, dump into that next room, but I'm bypassing stuff. Like I'm not clearing everything to get to my loved ones, especially when I feel like in home defense scenarios, especially like when we rep them out here in the shoot house, like it's pretty clear where the entry and where the ruckus is happening, right? So it kind of almost paints the picture for you where the bad stuff is happening, and you can be a little more deliberate about getting to your loved ones, consolidating them. And then you can still hear the bad stuff happening down there. And then I can take the time to, like, harden the door. Man, we give these out at every home defense class. This is something I discovered. The guys on my SWAT team have these. They're called wedges. You can get them on Amazon. We used to use them to keep doors open, but they're also really great for keeping doors closed.
Yeah.
Right. So you shove a wedge under a door. It doesn't make it impenetrable, but it adds layers. It adds time.
Gives you time. Yeah.
Right. It increases or decreases your they're making the decision more for you. Because if someone starts beating on that thing, it's like, bro, like
you're second guessing.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man. Like, you're having to use a lot of force to get into this door, and I'm telling you, I have a gun. I'm telling you, you better not come in here. Like, you're kind of
making the decision for me. You said it,
yeah. So and that's it, man. It's just what I guess you can boil it all down to CQB, but what it looks like versus like an offensive like multiple person kind of element, or like what it looks like when intruders in your home and now it's time to activate a home defense plan. Like I think the two are akin to one another, and there's certainly bleed over that you can learn from the two, but it's not offensive.
Yeah.
Or at least ideally it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, and of course, in there you're probably starting out dialing 911. Maybe if you're going to go grab the kids or something like that, your wife is maybe dealing with 911. I don't know exactly how that works.
Or you can pass that task on, like you said.
Yeah, you can pass that on. Yep. But that's where, again, I understand some people they get leery of some form of public service, like a government thing, but it's like, let them deal with it in reality, because I'd much rather be rattled, but all together with my family, and not with a expired body in my house.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
At least that, and certainly not one that I was responsible for, even if it was a bad guy. I get it. But that's just, I'd rather be rattled and have that dealt with by somebody else than me go in, and even if I emerge triumphant, now all of a sudden I'm on trial. Now all of a sudden, because
your entire life is being put out there.
Oh yeah, and everybody's picking everything apart, and for who knows what reason, maybe you didn't make the right call because it depending on what state you're in or depending on the actual scenario, and you made the wrong call on the wrong person at the wrong time and all that. You were trying to defend your family, and now you can't because you're in jail. But can you? It's so like, it's
one of those like really like chest beaty things.
Yeah.
But like, are you willing to make that the literal hill you die on? Because like, once you make a decision, like that's it. Right or wrong, that's it. You know what I mean? Especially wrong. If you get it wrong, then that was your chance to defend your family. Someone else is going to have to step in and do it for you from now on.
It's not a video game. You can't just restart.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's just,
there's a lot of weight involved, man. Like you have to make sure you're on your P's and Q's.
You do.
100%.
You do. And what I'm coming back to as well is what you talked about at the very beginning, and what we do make a huge point about here in any classes we've taught is like the preemptive side of things. Locking your doors at night, as stupid simple as it sounds, closing your garage door, whatever it is, could be the difference between you finding yourself in just a life-changing event or you just sleeping soundly at night and nothing ever happening, Even if it is like that drunk college kid, they won't be able to stumble into your house if the door is locked and they don't have the key, you know what I mean? Like,
or someone physically gassing themselves out because they can't physically make their way into your home.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or they just, determine if it is a bad guy, though, and they're just one of those criminals of opportunity. Well, this one's locked, on to the next one.
Not worth it.
No. Yeah, that's just, there was a situation that happened right next door to me, and I even saw half of it, but it was a gaggle of four all done up looking dudes who jumped out, and they all had ski masks and all that. It looked like it was out of a movie. They jump out of a car, and they got into the neighbor's, unlocked car in the middle of the night, and they're rooting around. They're trying to steal the car. You can tell because there's a push-button start, and you see the brake lights coming on, like they're trying to do that whole business. And I remember one of the guys starts going over to the service entry door to the garage. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, these guys got a little taste of an unlocked door. And, maybe
now
there wasn't a whole lot of money in the
Right.
car, but now let's see what else they got. Maybe they unlocked something else. And that's all it took for them to maybe get the idea that they couldn't even get in your house at all. Maybe they would have tried that car and it was locked and you just forget it. They got security cameras. I couldn't get in the car. Just let's get out of here. But they start getting that little high, the dope hit. And literally, I'll throw this out there. They were breaking into that neighbor's house at 4:59 a.m. At 5 a.m., that neighbor happened to have their programmed sprinklers set to come on. scared the living daylights out of the You can see the whole thing. We could afterwards on the security cameras. The neighbor sent it over to us. Scared the living daylights out of the one guy. He must have jumped out of his skin, goes running clear off down the driveway, and all the rest of them saw him running. They all ran off too and then jetted out of there. Lucky day it was, because who knows? I don't know if any other doors happen to be unlocked then, but...
And I think that's a really interesting thing. I've spent a lot of time like diving into like prey and like just aggressive behavior, right? I feel like a lot of these perpetrators will have a plan, and like they rehearse it in their minds. They know exactly how it's gonna go, and the second they encounter any kind of resistance, it's over.
Tuck the tail.
It's done. Like, time to get off the, let's get out of here. You know what I mean? And so, and that, like you said, it's as easy as just locking everything, you know? And not to like bash Midwesterners at all, but like, dude, I grew up in the hood. Like, like if you didn't, even when you locked everything, you still came to your car the next morning and like the doors were missing. You know what I mean? Like tires were like the fact
you're
that
on,
like
you're on cinder blocks.
Yeah, dude. Like the idea of like leaving your keys in your car or doors unlocked is just foreign to me.
It's kind of like a point of pride around here, I think, for some people. Well, my neighborhood's so safe. I just leave the door unlocked all the time, and they kind of like they say.
But your neighborhood's also safe until it's not. Though.
It's safe until it's not.
Yeah.
Because, dude, I mean, I live in a neighborhood, not to make myself seem posh or super uppity or anything like that, but I mean, I have no indication whatsoever, and I happened to be waking up to go to the bathroom. I saw headlights fly into our little cul-de-sac at like Mach 10 at 4:59 a.m. or whatever. I'm thinking to myself, this is weird. That's the only reason I noticed it. And my mind initially was like, no, there's no way. But everything about it was fishy. And then in the morning, I'm like, hey, check your security cams, neighbor. And whoa, sure enough.
Golly, man.
But yeah, it's wild stuff. But anyway, I'd say that's pretty good for an episode here of the Vortex Edge podcast. We'd love to hear some of your guys' comments or questions, and we can jump in there in the comment section if you're on YouTube, or you can head over to the Vortex Edge Instagram page and all that and shoot us some comments, messages, whatever that might be. Again, we know this is a topic that a lot of people have a lot of strong and varying opinions on. These are ours. But appreciate it. Appreciate it, Chris. And if there's any,
appreciate it, man.
If there's any suggestions too from folks for future home defense related podcasts, we'd love to hear those. And otherwise, see you guys on the next one.
Catch you on the next one.
Thank you. That's a wrap, everybody. Hope you liked this topic. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe right here, because there's going to be plenty more to come. If there's topics you'd like to hear us go over on the Vortex Edge podcast in the future, you can let us know by commenting below or hitting us up on Instagram, which is @VortexEdge. We'd love to hear your suggestions so we can be bringing you the kind of episodes and topics that you want to hear. Otherwise, we'll be seeing you on a future episode. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Bye.